Hi everyone, I'm Leslie Holden and this is the Digital Fashion and the New Team, a webinar from the Digital Fashion Group Academy. This session is the first in a series of 3 webinars in collaboration with our friends at Manchester Fashion Institute. This is the Digital Fashion Group's 3rd series of webinars. The first series we interrogated the metaverse, the second we unpacked data, and for this series we shall have a conversation between industry and education with a main focus on employability. Today we've gathered together an amazing group of panelists, pioneers in education and industry. From Amsterdam we have Anne-Christine Polet, Head of Stitch. Goedemiddag AC. From Manchester, we have Anita Mitchell, Digital Lead at Manchester Fashion Institute. Hi, Anita. From Milan, David Clementoni, President and Founder of Italian Artisans. And ciao, David. From New York, we have Michael Ferraro, Executive Director of FIT, DTech Lab. Good afternoon, Michael. And bright and early in Los Angeles, Sareen, the CEO and founder of TUKATECH. Good morning, Ram.
Good morning.
Thank you all so much for joining us. Our webinar will take 1 hour and we will have the discussion with our panelists, and at the end we'll open for Q&As. So if you're at home and would like to send your questions, please do it at any time using the Q&A tool here on Vimeo. And the webinar will also be on our YouTube channel, and the recording will be available via our feed to access the webinar library at the Digital Fashion Group Academy. So let's get started. Now, to set the scene, over the last decade, digital transformation has largely connected to digitization, consumer experience, and technology. Discussions concerning technological innovation have been very much to the fore, but for many years there's been no real urgency for digital transformation. Now, one could say this is no longer the case. In the past 2 years, companies have had transformation thrust upon them. A perfect storm caused mainly by the pandemic and Gen Z. And younger generations want to go far beyond the basics of technology to optimize and to drive value. As Gen Z becomes more influential, companies will need to transform to meet their expectations around better, more consistent experiences, seamless customer service, and control over interactions. Organizations will have to use technology better to make their business more resilient. Now, according to the International Data Corporation Global, spending on the digital transformation of business practices, products, and organizations is forecast globally to reach 2.8 trillion by 2025, more than double the amount allocated in 2020, as organizations pursue a holistic digital strategy for people, processes, technology, data, and governance. And if we look at the fashion industry specifically, the numbers are equally motivating. According to the IDCG, by 2025, fashion will see the second largest digitalization spending. Now, the Digital Fashion Group, we deliver digital mindset direction to industry leaders and innovators, along with 3D digital design skills to the creative backbone of fashion, the designer. The trajectory of the market now drives fashion leaders to galvanize their teams into embracing digital transformation for a more successful brand today and tomorrow. Now, what mix of knowledge and skills does it need, and what makes it different from the traditional team? And that's really the kind of overriding question for this webinar. Now, Anne-Christine, to quote you in your interview last November in Forbes, the real secret to digital success for your organization is not starting with the technology, but starting with humans. Can you start this whole webinar by telling us a little bit about Stitch and Hatch, and then your recommendations for fashion companies on how to build their teams for digitization and digitalization?
Sure thing. Thank you. So
Stitch and Hatch, we're a startup, and our sole focus is to help brands future proof the way they create and sell their collections B2B. And we started with this long ago. We're a unique startup because we were born within a fashion brand. So we've seen the industry from the inside out. And we built our products, both the digital showroom and our product called the Hub, which is for scaling 3D design. We built that together with designers at Tommy and at Calvin Klein, and with salespeople. So we've really seen all the different teams that you need in order to create a value chain. That's the first thing. But also, we've gone through the motions of working with those teams in order to digitize fashion. And so our core belief is that actually collections can and should be created digitally and sold digitally, because the traditional process, I call it traditional, really the physical creation process with prototypes and the handovers and the time it takes to actually get a garment approved for salesman samples, and then the extent that you have to do, the sampling that you need to do to get all those showrooms filled and then sell to your retailers. A lot of the times that entire calendar takes more than a year and a half. And I think that's very much at the root cause of, what causes a big part of overproduction in fashion and the waste in fashion. And to tackle that, we need to think differently, and we definitely need to do things digitally. A lot of the times, and that we really learned that from 2014 when we started to now, a lot of the times you tend to focus on the technology. It is human nature when you're confronted with big needs of change that you want to choose the path of least resistance. And a lot of the times it's almost wishful thinking that the silver bullet might be this software that you procure that's going to save all your problems, whereas in reality the real solution to some of these problems actually sits in people and sits in processes. If you change how you do things, the technology you choose to do it with should almost be secondary, because you need to reimagine, how am I going to work in this new world? How do I work so that I can reduce natural waste, so that I can work more efficiently, so I reduce communication mishaps and all these things that really happen on a daily basis right now within the industry. So it's a people thing, and humans were so resistant to change. So when it comes to this new team, you really need people that realize it's going to take a little bit of pain to go through that motion of change and go through that emotional curve that you encounter when confronted with change. But they also have the creativity to find new ways to do things, and that I think is really important. And no matter where in the organization you sit, whether you're in marketing or merchandising, you're design, or you're a salesperson, it's this kind of mindset and mentality that really makes a difference for a big change project. And the second thing that we've learned, which is so important for this new kind of fashion organization, is communication. Break down the silos. You need teams to speak to each other. You cannot operate like design only operates here and merchandising here, and you just wait for something to be handed over to you. You need to really connect and understand, how does everyone fit together in this new world so that we can actually create a better process and a better value chain in the future. So that's just in a nutshell, a couple of the learnings that we've had so far in all the years that we've done this.
Thank you. And in all this development towards digitalization, and with the teams that you've been working with, and it's, I guess it's really important to recognize that every team is unique in the way that they think and they operate and they execute, because you have to really work with the team and understanding the way that the way that they operate. So in a way, the design team works in one way, the production team works in another way, and the merchandising and marketing team, they all work in different ways, and much of this is due to, well, behavioral preferences, and and you need to consider the digital background of each of these people. Some teams will be perfectly comfortable with digital technologies, while others are not. Anita, as digital lead at Manchester Fashion Institute, one of the largest fashion schools in the UK, as research and practice shows, digitalization processes are limited in implementation without pedagogical and organizational change. What would you say industry was expecting and needing now from fashion graduates? And how are you in Manchester ensuring that your students have the appropriate digital background?
So, in terms of what industry is expecting and needing now from fashion graduates, Leslie mentioned earlier that the pandemic has had a significant impact on accelerating the move towards digitalisation for so many fashion businesses and schools. And at Manchester Fashion Institute, we have a long history in educating fashion digital technologies. So, for example, we've been teaching 3D prototyping with software such as Browsware vStitcher for nearly 20 years. We integrated 3D body scanning into the curriculum with the original high-spec scanners from TC Squared, certainly within the last 15 years, and robotics were introduced and taught by the likes of Dr. Steve Hayes within the same period. So our graduates now work with successful companies out there who have already made the switch to digitalisation. So our experience with digital tech is long and varied, as is our relationships and partnerships with industry, specifically in terms of work-based learning and placements. And these lasting relationships help us to better understand what our industry partners need now and, of course, in the future. So, despite the hype with the press, not all fashion businesses have made the move towards digital transformation just yet. However, many have, and for smaller fashion businesses who are working towards digital transformation, many do find the process daunting, specifically in terms of upskilling the current workforce, as there's often little time and very little headspace or budget to obviously do that. An alternative approach which our work placement team, headed by Lisa Trencher, has realised is to inject this knowledge by introducing, for example, a Manchester Fashion Institute work placement student who has the relevant digital skills and knowledge that a company may not currently have. This injection of knowledge can help an organisation to realise the tangible benefits of new technologies much more quickly without having to make a permanent employment commitment. However, many of our graduates do return to these companies as permanent employees after graduation. For other businesses who have already started on the journey to digitalisation, they're often looking for graduates who have flexible digital skills. And what I mean by that is they can often adapt or use different software versions. So, for example, at MFI, we look to ensure our students are aware of the wider spectrum of software applications. So, for example, for 3D prototyping, students will be introduced different prototyping applications, so they understand the advantages and limitations of them all. These adaptive, critical, evaluative, and analytical skills are so important for today's graduates to master, as they're going into a world of work where change is going to be it's going to be constant, it's going to be fast, and the software that they learned at university will be quickly replaced by new versions that are more sophisticated. So having this confident and adaptable lifelong learning mentality with digital technology is now really essential. So finally, I wanted to rebalance this discussion by stressing that from our experience at Manchester Fashion Institute, strong analogue skills are still currently important because they're crucial for scaffolding the development of digital skills. So, for example, developing good manual drawing skills by practicing life drawing will help designers to apply digital drawing tools and applications to a much better standard because they don't need to struggle with the application of anatomical parameters, for example, when learning a new digital application. The same applies to pattern cutting. Having strong manual pattern cutting skills again assists with and simplifies the process of pattern development and manipulation when developing 3D prototyping skills. And it's encouraging to see new software developments coming on board from companies such as TUKATECH and their digital software that has been created to help develop users to develop technical pattern cutting skills. Likewise, knowing how garments are constructed is also critical because technologies such as robotics are still evolving. So understanding the analog methods will greatly inform the development of future robotics for fabric handling purposes, and graduates can be instrumental in this process too. So in a nutshell, industry expect industry-ready, future-proof graduates. They value graduates who understand the technologies and those that can add value to their businesses by contributing where relevant to their digital strategy. Finally, many fashion businesses expect graduates to be proficient with the digital technologies that are appropriate with their and expect them to be flexible and adaptive lifelong learners, which ultimately assists to future-proof their current digital skills and future knowledge base. So that's all from me. I hope that was useful, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Anita. That was great. And I mean, I'm just kind of hearing these things that education um, has to develop in the students. It's such a huge ask, isn't it? When industry, in many ways, are struggling to understand where they should go with digitalization, and education have to really lead in many ways. And the very nature of digital transformation is about innovation. So, education should really be involved in innovating new ways of seeing new technologies and new ways of thinking about technology, new directions for fashion companies. And to a certain extent, embracing the new often means compromising the old. And it can tend to hinder a company more than pushing it forward. And it's not always easy to identify what are the old technologies that you really need to let go of, and then how you replace them. And that really brings me on to my next question for David. When we talk about a new team because of digitalization, it shouldn't be necessary to really throw out all the traditions for new things. And Italian Artisan is the biggest made in Italy online platform for fashion manufacturing, with 700 manufacturers on your books. And tell us a little about your platform and in what ways you're working with artisans to launch them into digitalization, and how you believe that tradition and innovation can not only coexist but enhance one another.
Thanks, Leslie, and thanks everybody for having me here. As anticipated, we are a Made in Italy platform for production. So I started this company because I realized that the small manufacturer, the artisans of Made in Italy, of premium luxury products, they were really unable to get internationally in an easy way, especially with digitalization. So most of the time they were going like to traditional fairs, to meetings, to networks, but they couldn't follow up and they couldn't really build strong relationships with online. So we started from there. We started to connect the heritage of manufacturing to the international buyers and brands. And that's how we work basically on our custom platform. So we receive the demand of international brands that wants to produce their own collection, and we spread the demand to all the manufacturers so they can answer to the brand and they can propose their knowledge, their know-how, and of course their manufacturing sites. So it's such a matter of spreading the demand and distribute the manufacturing of Made in Italy. And that's was our goal, was our dream. And by today, we actually see that by letting them work all together, we didn't really disrupt with our innovation. And that's something that I want to bring to the table, like the disruption concept. So I strongly believe when we talk about innovating an industry which has a lot of years of heritage, let's imagine that the craftsman was one of the first jobs that the human being has done, right? So when we talk about fashion, after eating, we started to put clothes on ourselves. So it's been a lot of years that we're doing that. So it's not about just how we've done these jobs or this work in the last 20 to 30 years, but in thousands of years. So we had to really understand this concept before trying to evolve this concept, because we as a startup, we began just with numbers, with digital, but we really had to take into consideration which were the traditional approach of this manufacturing company. As Anita was anticipating as well, we strongly believe that the skills of human being needs to be the first step, and the manufacturing skills need to be the first step to digitalize them after. So we have to get an approach which was a really evolving approach. And we call it a natural evolving approach. So we started to look at such as the tree, right? You look at the roots and you find that there are leaves and the fruits are coming after the roots. So we strongly believe in Italian arts, and I strongly believe that the next generation of fashion, even there are amazing tools, they still need to be connected to roots, and they still need to be respecting the tradition of manufacturing, the heritage of manufacturing that has been done for thousands of years, and try to evolve that instead of just disrupting it. Because at some point, we always need to be connected to the roots to get more energy to grow even more.
Great, Dave. Thank you so much, David. And one of the main challenges that traditional fashion value chain faces is its dis, dis, distributed nature with many disconnected teams. I mean, you must see that as well, even in the small artisanal companies. And there's a strong business case to bring all these different activities as close to one another as possible, to link them with digitalization into a single technology ecosystem. And a question now to Ram. Tell us about TUKATECH's development of an on-demand microfactories, which also kind of really links with artisanal practices as well. And in what ways this approach impacts not only the sustainable aspects of manufacturing, but also the way we consider how the team will collaborate or will collaborate in the future.
Thank you. Thank you for having me share my thinking. They call us the disruptors. Um, in 2012, working with a university, we showed the proof of concept where we body scanned a person, we designed on their body, we had them get engaged to decide where do they want certain graphics and so on. Then we actually printed, sewn, and put the garments on their body in 2 hours and 45 minutes. That video went viral, and that was the birth of demand manufacturing. That was the birth of the concept where you develop digitally, you show digitally, you sell digitally, and then you make what you have sold. So zero waste as far as the product development is concerned, or all the way to the inventory. All you have is the physical fabric or the trims that you can convert any which way. We've kept that crusade really, really live. And today we have more than 600 factories around the globe. But the big thrust has come in the last 2 years. There's so much action going on in the United States itself, where they see the need because of all the possible problems coming up with the supply chain as well as all the logistics problems. So we had predicted that we are going to have what we call the new revolution coming from manufacturing. Too much waste, too much guesswork, and too much resistance for the change. You spoke about Gen Z. Well, they are there to teach us few things, the old timers. Whatever we know about the industry, sometimes it is coming in our own way because we have a paradigm. Unless we have that shift and think like them, we will all fail and they will eat our lunch. Today, the young people look at the things very differently. They look at what is it they want to achieve and what technology can help them. Whereas all of us are so fixated, this is how you do it. You make a pattern, you put it on a fabric, you cut it, then you find out after putting on the dummy if A, your pattern was correct. If not, you go back and correct the pattern, go back all the way back and forth. Well, that's not going to happen with 3D, right? We stopped making physical samples in factories in 2005. As a matter of fact, one of the retailers out of UK, Tesco, awarded Hydramani, a Sri Lankan company, a technical excellence award for eliminating samples. So it's not that it wasn't done. It was the people who absolutely came in the way. Because, and I heard many times from industry people, if I do this, what am I going to do? So there was a lot of resistance for the implementation of technology, but pandemic changed that. You look at the spectrum in the industry where one side is Italy, where we all recognize fashion sense and the creativity and so on is par excellence. And then on the other side is the countries like China and Bangladesh, where the labor is so cheap that we could do anything so long as we can get it done. Italians were the first ones to look at automation. Wherever they could replace a human being with a machine, they were able to do it. We started out a small little thing called TUKA centers in 2000 to help the industry people, the startups, the small companies, where they could walk in to a service center and offer a la carte services. And I tell you something very interesting. Today, those TUKA centers have become micro factories because they offer cut and sew, design, develop, cut and sew, design only, develop only, or whatever a la carte services you needed. I think the future is we are going to make what we have sold rather than keep the inventory. Anyone who has been in the fashion industry knows how the struggle for the retailer has been. Why is it that we buy something for $4 and put it for $40 and still don't make money as a retailer? There's so much to learn from automotive industry. Look at what our friend Elon Musk has done. Direct to consumer, not electric car, not batteries, direct to consumer by eliminating all the noise in between. And that's exactly what I feel the future of the industry is.
Thank you, Ram. That's fantastic, and I think it's an amazing opportunity to have the microfactories, to have anybody, in essence, reaching out to a microfactory to have manufacturing done, and in whatever quantity that they want to have it done in. So it really gives a completely different aspect to how we see production in the fashion industry. And a lot of how we work across the fashion industry has to do with collaboration, obviously, because there's so many different players in the value chain and different kinds of partnerships. And one of the most critical and yet underdeveloped skill in the fashion industry um, is is that skill of collaboration in fashion education. And this is essential in working in teams in the future. And for education, collaboration with industry partners is very much about a new kind of team working and together to solve challenging problems and students learning by doing with industry. And that really brings me round to the last question, last but certainly not least ever, Michael. You're the executive director of FIT DTech Lab, and DTech is where teams of FIT students, together with experts and faculty, engage in research and problem solving projects for companies facing a wide range of challenges. Now, one could say that the students and the faculty become an extension of the company team and an extension of their research and development team. And can you tell us a bit more about the DTech Lab and in what ways you see this work impacting the preconceived idea of a fashion industry team?
Thank you, Leslie. Yeah, I mean, we've touched on, and everybody's sort of touched on different aspects of how the industry needs to change. And collaboration is essential to it. It's not just a multidisciplinary type collaboration, it's a transdisciplinary collaboration. People that need to understand all aspects of the process, not just their piece of it. And the DTech Lab itself is been put together with a mission to engage faculty and students solving industry problems with design and technology. And what we serve is as a bridge between industry and academia, where we can leverage the fresh insights and new ideas of talented, smart students. But the way in which we operate our projects is they are guided by expert faculty. So we're delivering to industry professional results, but it's an amazing high impact learning experience for the students. In a way, they're almost like master classes where they get to be involved and actually solve significant problems with their creative vision, but with a framework around them that supports the collaboration, that supports the transdisciplinary nature of the problem solving, and has the guidance and direction of expert faculty. And FIT is unique in its combined strength of design, science, business, and technology. And we can draw on that entire intellectual and creative capital as we put together our teams. And these have been remarkably exciting projects for the students and remarkably successful in terms of what we've been able to help industry do. It is really hard to innovate within an existing industry framework. It's hard to take people off of projects where there are tight deadlines and demands. And the environment of the lab allows us to de-risk innovation on behalf of brands and retailers. They can work with us while we think through the problems, while we execute solutions, so that the industry partners understand what it is that they need to bring it back inside, how to build the kind of team that's needed. And in fact, we've talked about this, a couple of our speakers, Anita and Ram and Anne, have all talked about how ultimately change management is really one of the biggest challenges the industry faces. And they're facing it because they don't know how to, so many chief marketing officers know that they've heard about the metaverse, but have no idea really what it is. And it needs to be cultivated and incubated in a research environment, which is industry focused and goal directed, so that they can take away learning and understanding. And that's really what we've built at the DTech Lab. And we've done 60 some odd projects in 5 years with 250 students. So we've done a lot. We do roughly 10 projects a year, which is sometimes hard to believe. And they're made up of teams that come, as I say, from across the college. And oftentimes we will discover that this is the first time a fashion design student has ever met a fashion business management student, or where a tech designer has met somebody in UI and UX. So the kind of cross-disciplinary, transdisciplinary nature of these projects has been one of the things that I feel that has been essential to the success, and really speaks to what industry broadly needs, which is that collaborative transdisciplinary problem solving with agile teams that are versed in many of the aspects of what needs to be solved. It is somewhat staggering to realize the amount of technical skills that young people need to be effective in the marketplace. Industry doesn't have it, so they're looking to these graduates to bring in all of the skills. So just knowing how to use a 3D fashion prototyping system is good, but it needs to be integrated into computer animation if you're going to be using it to present fashion collections in innovative ways. And that conversation between the team that may be doing the media production and the designer has to be a fluid conversation where everybody sort of understands what is being, what you're striving to achieve and what's needed to achieve it. So these projects, and we structure all our projects that way so that there is that broad learning, and it is really one of the things that I found most rewarding for myself, but also really most rewarding for the students and the faculty, because they really do get an on-ramp. The students really get an on-ramp into high level positions in industries where they're change makers. So that kind of summarizes the general framework of the DTech Lab. I could tell you we've done projects which have ranged from having designed a complete new uniform collection for the Girl Scouts of the United States, and we were responsible for having them change their entire fashion value chain to a digital fashion value chain. We did traditional research to understand the legacy of the uniform. We then went through traditional design iteration process. We designed 68 pieces. The Girl Scouts selected an assortment of about 25 pieces. We built 3D virtual prototypes, which allowed the Girl Scout leadership to explore color blocking, fit, logo placement, and really iterate through many design decisions. It happened to be we happened to be doing the project at a time they were going through a brand revision, so it was it offered them a great deal of flexibility to be able to experiment with their new brand guidelines on these uniforms. So after prototyping, we supported them through their first top of production samples, and then we launched the collection as a live stream with an influencer, and we had 3D volumetric scans of a Girl Scout wearing the new uniform collection. So it really kind of went across the entire chain from design, manufacturing to marketing and retail, with a new vision for them to move forward. And we explore all those aspects, and to different degrees with different partners depending on what their needs are. So it's a dynamic place, it's a dynamic industry, and it really is seeing an enormous intersection between retail and media technology, and how manufacturing is integrating into that by having 3D assets that are being leveraged from the design side, the manufacturing side, and the marketing and retail side. So it's bringing both ends of the value chain much closer together, and that really has changed what you need from new graduates and what the industry needs.
Cool. That's so much information on that subject, and that's really good because it kind of really leads me to the next question that I wanted to bring to the team. But I have another question, which, I think the way that you're leading the DTech team, Michael, it really shows clear direction and leadership. And my question here to everybody is, what kind of leadership is needed to reimagine the fashion team of the future? What kind of direction should leaders take in bringing this together? Because it can be, like thinking from an education perspective, you might have many people in your team in the university who don't have any digital knowledge and need to upskill and need to learn more about digital, and that can be very difficult to achieve. So the kind of people, the kind of way that a leader has to work, what could that be like?
Thank you, Michael, for bringing this Boy Scout, Girl Scouts. They use TUKA 3D technology, by the way. And the other mention about need for the animation. Um, we're the only company which has the integrated motion simulation as well as the real time behavior of the fabric, just exactly replication of what we do in the fit session. My definition of fashion is very simple. It's called fit. If it doesn't fit, it doesn't sell. And this FIT is different fit, okay? Uh, no pun intended. Unfortunately, most of the technology companies are working with people who are more creative people. They are not developing fit. This is one of the reasons most of the brands used to have their master blocks, the block that fitted their fit model, and everybody had to work from those. I personally feel that the future in fashion industry, there will be no pattern makers. There'll be pattern manipulators. Patterns will be available on the internet free. is no different than what Photoshop has done to the advertising agency, where nobody has to hire the actors and photo shoot for a print ad. It is now 15 minutes Photoshop. A 20-year-old kid can do an amazing job, but it used to cost me $100,000 with a marketing agency. We were the first one to create thousands of garments already available on the internet with 3D garments that fit perfectly for people who don't know what a sleeve looks like or what a front or a back or a collar looks like, but they know what a garment looks like. What happens underneath there is the patterns. What happens underneath was the body that was fitted on. So it is not something which is unattainable, but it's a great start. There are approximately 20 colleges in California who teach with our 3D systems. There are even 3 high schools in California who teach with technology. So the difference between East Coast and West Coast, East Coast is more like Wall Street driven, whereas this is creativity. Most of the big retailers globally have design and innovation labs in California. So we are intimately involved with the design development because that's where it happens. But we also manufacture here. We have a very large manufacturing base here. So the innovation happens in the factories. We
And
really
Ram,
need the colleges.
sorry to interrupt you, Ram. Would you say then that a leader moving the company towards digitalization and moving the team towards digitalization has to use specific um, tools, software that brings everything together? Is the software and the technology the key to leading the team into digitalization, or
Absolutely.
is it more from the human perspective, like Anne Christine was talking about at the beginning? Or
It's a combination of both. As we all know, most of the technologies are developed by lazy people, people who just invent the button. But those buttons have to be thought of. What is it which is the challenge of the industry? Therefore, I can write the code for that. Writing code is not a genius thing. Knowing what to write in the code. So you've got to go in, find out what are the pain points and how can I automate that? How can I simplify? Disruption doesn't mean a troublemaker. It just means you're taking the noise away. You're simplifying the process. And that's exactly what it is.
David, can I ask you to comment on what Ram is saying? How does this work with small artisanal teams? How do you work with them to digitalize the process?
So I'm amazed about the future because I believe that Ram knows the future. I'm mostly in touch. We are mostly in touch with the traditional aspects on doing, and some of them, as Ram was saying, are really technologically advanced. It doesn't mean we're talking about artisans that just do not have the technology inside of their companies, but they just have craftsmanship processes still on doing the shoes, bags, accessories, or clothing. So it's a matter of doing instead of a matter of designing. So basically, what we normally do is receive the design from international brands and to send the design to the manufacturers. Some of them do not have like technical drawings or 3D pattern making, so we help them to reach them. And this makes a supply chain, which is a virtual supply chain. So we had to look at the all single processes and distribute these all single processes among the right players of the supply chain. And this created a new way of leadership. Everyone was talking about themselves. Everyone was talking about their company instead of talking about the distributed company or made in Italy. Right now, what happened is that everybody is contributing to the realization of a made in Italy product for an international client. So when we talk about leadership for our community, is a matter of recognizing themselves that they're doing something for the good of the community itself, instead of just doing something good for the company itself. And that creates a strong loyalty to the brand, a strong relationship to the all leaders that are taking part of the whole value chain.
That's really interesting. That idea of a sense of community being key in change management, I guess, as well. And Christine, um, you have really built a community, and in Amsterdam, because I worked there. I was even there today. I left there this afternoon. Um, Amsterdam, the digital community in Amsterdam is really close and very innovative. There's so much innovation happening there. Is is that important? Do you think that people are connecting in that way, that they feel like they're part of a community, not just in the company that they're working for, but also in the city, in the town, things are organized, etc., etc.
Oh, absolutely. I think that sense of community is really much needed, especially also for information sharing and sharing insights and learnings on this journey we're all in. Because if you consider what is the future of fashion, we all have a vision, but no one knows for sure like this is going to be it. We all have to build this industry up again in a digital way, but we have to do it together. So a sense of community is really, really important. And I think the second reason why I'm a strong advocate of community is also for the brands themselves. I mean, to your last question regarding leadership, I think from a brand's perspective, I think this is a very scary time to be a leader at a fashion brand right now, because the industry itself at a lot of brands, you kind of grow up in these companies and you see people that work in fashion, they tend to stay in fashion. And for years and years and years, the industry it's I think the first time that we're really at this culmination of like, oh, our ways of working are really going to change. And these leaders are being forced to learn new technologies, new ways, new processes, new vendors. And it's a scary time to actually be leading teams. And especially if your teams are also pushing for that kind of change. So if there's community, you can also lean on each other and understand like, hey, how are you dealing with these issues and how are you approaching that? And I think that is something that traditionally hasn't happened that often in fashion yet. But I think with the advent of digitization and all these new business models and new companies coming up, you start to see this more and more. And it's so needed. It's so needed to continue on this journey, because unfortunately, a lot of digital projects kind of die because leadership is just not willing to go the extra mile, or they just don't have the courage to say, yes, we're gonna go for it for the long run. And even though if the ROI might not be there on the immediate term, they're just not willing to go through the difficult process of change for the longer term. So that's why it's so needed that there's community, we can build on each other, and that leadership has courage and a long-term vision, and that they really understand like we're doing this to change our business for good. So that's why we're committed and we're putting it on a strategic priority for all of us for the next 5 years. I think those things they need to be in place for us to really be successful.
Thank you. That's really great points there. And I'm just looking at the screen here. We have a question from Zisham. What are the current design team structures the digital fashion industry use now? That's an interesting question. What is it just now? What is it like at the moment? And how do you see the change over time as the technology evolves?
I can jump in on that. I mean, there is no set team. The teams evolve, they change. The demand, the objective changes. They need to have an agility and an ability to understand multiple parts of the project. So we had done a project with POC Sports, which is a high-end bicycling and snowboarding apparel company. And we had designers who were sitting soldering at soldering circuits, because they built into a fanny pack that was part of a backpack, which they made, that had directional signals and a brake light that were controlled from their phone. So not only did they conceptualize the product itself, they looked at how it served the brands need to promote sustainability by getting people all out of cars and onto bicycles in urban environments. So they thought very systemically about the development of that product and came up with something that was designed to promote safety for the bicyclists. So that you could see that there's a multiple layers to understanding that. And they were designing and they were programming the iPhone app so that after you entered your destination in a map, it plotted your route through the city. As you got to different waypoints, it vibrated a little motor on your left thigh or your right thigh to turn right and turned the directional signal on automatically. So that sort of systematic thinking, recognizing how sustainability is not just simply about reducing waste, but it is an interconnected system that includes communities, which is, I think, really a very different way to kind of incorporate the idea of what a team needs to be.
And we are almost over, but we have one last question here from Livia, who Anne Christine and I know quite well. How can we enhance creativity in our fashion teams considering these future scenarios? This is a quick answer to someone. Who wants to take this one?
I'll be really quick because I have a very strong opinion on this. You can only create extra creativity in fashion teams if you create time for it. Because the teams, especially in the bigger brands, are under such duress of the calendar. They have no time, no headspace. So how are you expected to learn 3D design and then also be super creative if you can barely finish the collection on time, you know? So I think you really need to realize that there needs to be some time also made, because with the advent of new technology, you can be more creative without wasting any natural resources, but you need to also give designers a chance to learn it.
And I can corroborate that working with Stitch, we did a product in a day, which was a remarkable experience, which brought whole teams of people together to iterate ideas very quickly. But they were isolated from their normal work environment, and they were given the support that was needed. So it's that kind of exactly that freedom that is so that white space, if you will.
I want to do some validation here. Bicycle apparel. Just think of it, the challenge from the manufacturer and designer's point of view. I have 25 people going in a group in the weekend. Everybody has a different body shape. Everybody's wearing a different graphic and so on. How do I know which one to keep in the inventory? My first customer, California-based company, Voler, VOLER.com. If you go to their website, till today, for 10 years, they don't make a garment. They don't have an inventory. This is where analytics play the role. As a designer, I design what I can do with a fabric. I have digital inventory of sizes. So I can now have 7 sizes so I can reach out to more people. I can have better graded sizes. I can allow people to really choose which is my body size, what are the garments. And then I have Google Analytics to tell me this image nobody's even looking at. So I just change the design. I upload. So every image over there is digital, is a TUKA 3D. Every garment is made on demand. And that is the beauty. That is how you survive in this business. But creating design also should be restricted by not choosing this handmade wooden buttons in Indonesia and then something is coming from someplace. You've got to look at from the designer and restrict them to make sure that they are able to get that product to the market very quickly without any interruptions.
Thank you, Ram. And that really brings us to the end of our webinar. It was a fantastic conversation. I think we could have gone on for quite a bit longer. We're touching on so many subjects, and I think that's very clear that the idea of what is the new team. It's not just one thing, is it? What is the team, and so many aspects to what a team is and what we have to think about going forward. And I think there was so many really pertinent and important points coming out from everything that you were all saying. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you for your questions, and I'm sorry we didn't get around to them all. And thank you, and we look forward to seeing you here the next time. Thank you very much. Bye-bye to everybody.